another interesting thing I wanted to ask you about is, I'm a DP, I'm a camera guy, but what I find interesting is, stories like COG and Stanford kind of, especially Stanford being a period piece, lend themselves to being shot on film, and you feel like they should have that look and that feel, and the landscapes of Portland, Oregon, and I remember even talking to you about it. COG, the story is kind of timeless. It's kind of like, it kind of has a 70s vibe, but
it's sort of modern day. It's not all over the
Talk to us about still achieving that feeling, yet shooting, I think both. Well, one was Red Epic, the other one was Red Dragon.
Yeah, and the first movie was Red One.
The first one was Red One. So
you can look at my films through the models of the Red camera.
This is actually a commercial for Red.
For Red, yeah. No, I would love to shoot on film. Of course I would. It would be like a great experience, but there isn't the financial viability behind it that warrants, I think, the good that comes from it. I don't know. I think the trick has been when people have worked too hard to make digital look like film. I think that, but nowadays that the cameras are so much closer, that was more the ideology back with DVs or even 5Ds and stuff like that. Now that the looks are so similar, and also I think that the audiences have become more adjusted to the digital feeling, I just don't even think about it as being an option. But I think it changes with each film. To me, I see grain now, because really that's what we're talking about mostly when we're talking about film. There's other things, there's certain blooms, the highlights work in different ways, but for the most part we're talking about texture, and we can control that to some degrees in the films. But it's interesting, with COG, we didn't go to many great lengths. We were like, we're shooting this digitally and we're not gonna pretend it's otherwise, and we're not gonna dirty up the image much or put a lot of diffusion, we didn't. With Stanford, because it took place in 1971, we had to be more aware. You couldn't have made a sharp, crisp, clean looking, it would have confused people. And so we used a lot of hazers. We used a lot of post grain. We did a lot of things, not so much to say, we want it to look like film, but for this one, I wanted it to kind of have a feeling. I wanted it to feel like it was the 70s, but not in a really heavy gimmicky way. And a lot of that came from color palette, but a lot of it also just came from how we treated it afterwards. And while we were shooting it, which is, we pumped a lot of haze into the rooms so that it felt like it was naturally. It was a softened. But I don't think every movie needs. It just depends on the film. But I think the thing is that the tools are a little bit broader now. So you can't say, I want it to look a little bit more like film, but I want to control it in this way. And I just don't even really see film as being an option. I don't see it as being a practical option. Also for how I like to work as an editor, I love that I can look at my footage and be cutting it right away and be cutting the full resolution. I don't even use transcodes. I cut red raw. I don't use any interlopers. So in a weird way I let the ideology go through the whole process. But it's mostly been financial necessity, because on Stanford we did look at what would it cost to shoot on film, and it's still substantial. Even with the deals that are out there, and even with all the people willing to help to keep film alive, it's still not. I feel like it has to be a deep cornerstone of what you want to do to justify it. And there are some people doing that. Joe Swanberg's shooting on film and has a lot of reasons why he's doing it. There are indie filmmakers shooting on film or shooting on Super 16, and I think their movies look beautiful and great. But I don't get that motivated by it. I'm never that drawn to it. Partly because I also like being able to run the camera long and not worry about it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Especially a shoot like Stanford with the budget and then also the time, the time restraints that you had. Every day. 98 setups is it's like a world record.
Oh my god, just even to swap out the magazines and stuff. But it's interesting, I read an interview with David O. Russell lately where he said actors are getting too comfortable with being able to keep the camera rolling, which I thought was interesting. Having made a film at the dawn of Red, now 6 or 7 years later, he likes to shoot on film, so the actors are actually scared for when it's going to roll out. That actually motivates them some. And I like that. It's like a reverse. Before it used to be take your time because we can keep this rolling, it doesn't cost us more money. And now it's you're wasting our, it's more the different attitude of how you're going to pressure an actor into being no, we can't go again. Not because of time, because he can't afford the film or whatever it might be. Obviously, he can afford the film.
But I think that also branches out to everyone. Even as a director or as a DP, there's a lot of criticism now of now I own a Red camera, I'm a DP.
Exactly.
And there is still an art form to it, but there's a lot of criticism about, does it really take the same amount of talent, the same amount of care, because digital, you can roll. You don't like it, you can actually delete the freaking clip and make more room, and then.
But I remember, like even on Avatar, he was basically making a movie in a computer, right? There was very little. It was mostly animated film, and you think with Cameron, people would ask him like, well, how do you know when you have an image? You can keep on changing it all the way up until like minutes before the movie premieres. How do you know what your images are? And he's like, well, you give yourself the same restrictions. If he took the attitude, and you watch all the behind the scenes stuff of like, if Pandora existed and he could take a camera and shoot it there, that's the ideology he used. And you watch the movie carefully, he doesn't. And I think part of the reason why people responded to it strongly is that it's not, the camera doesn't do anything special in that movie. It doesn't do anything that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so I think there's a lot to be said about self-restriction, disciplining certain things in order to achieve something. And you just have to do that in different ways. And I think digital opens up more tools. I don't think it closes that many doors. And I lament film in the ways a lot of other people do, but the other time I think we also ignore like the great things it's brought.
Absolutely.
And I think it's too easy to get cynical about it, when actually, in fact, I think it's brought a lot more good than bad.
I agree. I think that, alongside with where the web is going, where the internet is, and all the different channels and outlets for filmmakers and artists to voice what they want, and
that's the next step, right? Is format. I think what it is that all these things are arbitrary, right? Like a feature film is 2 hours long, and a television show is 30 minutes if it's a comedy, an hour if it's a drama, and a short film is under. Those are all arbitrary because we just need to
make rules.
We need to have rules so that we can have some way of showing these things. Same with books. You have, just like you have novellas or novels or short stories, these things are sort of arbitrary, but I'm interested to see, I think it's changing a lot now with streaming and binge watching, and the format of a story is just, it's molding it, it's just changing a lot.
Yeah.
And I think television is becoming more like film, and film is becoming more like television, and the stories are just, the length is going to be the only thing that determines what makes a story different, as opposed to, it used to be aesthetics or whatever, but now I think technology has changed that a lot. And I think indie production being more common and more similar to television production has primed directors to do different kind. I think that's how we end up with something like True Detective. It's interesting, but I do think that the format, they're just changing because I do think digital has like leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. Yeah. And someone can make an indie film that looks as good, if not better, than a big studio movie. And that didn't used to exist. There used to be this scrappy quality indie filmmaking, right? It used to be you would see you would be shooting, Spanking the Monkey was shot on short ends and that kind of thing. Yeah. And now it's like, oh wait, our limits aren't, it removes a lot of excuses. It puts more cameras in more people's hands and maybe less capable people's hands, but it also gives people less opportunity to make excuses. I tell that to myself. I'm like, I'm shooting with the same camera that Spider-Man 3 is shooting on, and I'm editing with the same equipment that the Cano brothers are cutting on. So I can't say to myself, no, I only have that. That's the thing I think is going away more, and that's scary, because then you just have to say, oh no, I just have to be good. That's scary. That really scares me.